July 4th, 1960 was a banner day for the United States of America. Yes, it was Independence Day, but something grand happened that day. Les Thatcher became a professional wrestler. Hello, everybody. This is Angelo DeCipio. Welcome to Wrestling with the Future. I'm joined tonight by a frequent guest. He is one of our favorite people, Nikita Brezhnikov. How are you, Nikki?
I'm doing great. Hello, everybody.
Nikki, we got a great show tonight. One of our comrades, for old school comrades, is here tonight. The legendary Les Thatcher himself. Let me tell everybody a little bit about Les. Les is a semi-retired professional wrestler, and we always say semi-retired because pro wrestlers never really retire, do they?
No.
He is a bodybuilder, a legendary trainer. He's also, quite frankly, the guy I wanted to have on because nobody can tell a tale like Les Thatcher. I've heard this man tell stories, and I said, I got to have him on. I want to hear these stories up close and personal. I want to hear these stories. So he also sits on the board of directors of your favorite group, Nikki, the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Yes.
I won't say that.
I got to interrupt you there. No, I'm no longer on the board anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
No, it's okay. But no, I'm not, haven't been on the board for several years.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. He's also won several regional tag team championships with various partners, including the legendary Nelson Royal and Roger Kirby, and turned himself to the singles competition as a junior heavyweight before moving on up to Wrestling with the Future. How are you guys? What's happening?
Well, that's it. We can go home now, right?
Okay, bye.
You've covered my. You talk about stories. You just reminded me of a deal. Nick Goulas used to do his own promos and plug his the Nashville town on Nashville TV, and. Yeah. But he would almost, next Wednesday night, this and that, and this and that, and this and that, and he's going to do this to this guy and that guy. And anyway, he's got Len Rossi, and they're all taped, right? It's not live, so you can always do them over. And so Nick is telling the whole story and telling Len's going to beat him because of this, and Tojo did this to Len, and Nick, and what do you think, Len? Len says, Nick, you said it all, and he walked off, and Nick about had a fit.
I got to tell you something, brother. We've done it's funny, there's like a theme going here. The last 4 shows I did, this show included, Nick Goulas has come up in every show, every single show. None more profoundly, however, than the show I did recently with Ron Fuller. That was a barn burner. That was a good one. I got to tell you something, Les, in the interest of full disclosure, my ex-wife used to wrestle for Nick Goulas. She was married at the time to David Novak of the Bounty Hunters.
All right, I never knew David had a wife that wrestled. I didn't know the Bounty Hunters real well. I was just on my way. I was I'd just come back out of Eastern Canada Maritimes back into Nashville when they were getting their start there. And I didn't stay that long, and then I went on into Tampa, so I didn't really know them either. But, well, good. Then you've been wrestled before. Then you've behaved yourself, right?
You mean me? Please, brother. I've been pinned by the best of them.
Okay.
Nikki, rescue me from this shit.
You put her over. Let's put it that way, and you put her over, right?
Oh, boy, did I. And then some.
Yeah.
All right.
And I had to get the hell out of Tennessee after that. Nikki, let's talk to Les.
Yes, sir.
You got it, brother.
Les, you got to see what things are today. And, we don't want to sit here and be like angry old men and just throw crap up on the wall. But it's like, we talk so many times about that word respect, and people that want to be in this business, it's like, pay those dues, but selling, that art of selling, we just lost that so much, and that keeps coming up in so many conversations that I'm in, because people say to me, "What do you think could really help wrestling today?" I said, "Sell. You got to be able to lay down, to have enough respect. If I'm working with Les Thatcher, he puts a move on me, I'm not going to get up and walk off to the dressing room just like, okay, I spilled the drink and that was it. It's like, no, I'm hurt. He beat me."
Yeah, I think you're saying sell, but that fits in the category that I say there's not a lot of workers today. When I say workers now, there's wrestlers and they're acrobats and they're good athletes and they're in shape and they can do amazing things. But the one thing that most of them don't do well is tell a story. And you got to be a worker to tell a story.
Because
shut up, man. We're having
yeah, brother, I'll tell you what. You just put your finger on something that ties right into what you and Nikki are talking about. And it's something Nikki knows I harp on this show about a lot. And that is the lost art of psychology. Without that, there's no selling. Without that, there's no working. Without that, there's no character. What happened to psychology? Where did the ring psychology go? Where's all the generals at? Where are the men?
Well, you see, that's the point. When I broke into business 60 plus years ago, I had a lot of veterans to work with, and nobody had to teach me respect. It was just something I understood, and you listened, and I was always a baby face, so whoever the heel was, was going to call the match anyway. But you learned. But now a lot of the things, these kids, first of all, there's 8 million guys who will tell you they can train you and can't train themselves, and there's very few legitimate trainers that I would send anybody to.
Oh my
and that's one thing. But the other thing is, a lot of these kids, it's monkey see, monkey do. So they just do what they see on TV, or they see something cool, and it's, hey, it's so cool, I'm going to do it. But what they don't see is how that person got to that cool move and where they went from that cool move, which is part of the story.
Exactly. That drives me nuts. We had one of the legendary trainers on recently, Doc Diamond, who began the Monster Factory with Larry Sharp and Buddy Rogers way back when. By the way, I trained at the Monster Factory, one of the premier wrestlings, even today still, one of the premier wrestling schools. I've done
a half dozen weekend camps up there with Danny in the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And by the way, unless it's talking about Danny, he's Danny Cage. Who runs the Monster Factory. A great guy, great guy. Right. And he learned from his teachers. He's giving to this generation what was given to him, which is respect. A show of respect for your elders first, the business second, and the art of ring psychology third. Because without the first two, there is no three.
That's
as simple as it gets.
Just a month. Well, it hasn't been a month yet. 3 weeks ago, I guess it was. Tom Pritchard and I did a weekend camp here, and our focus everybody was there had some experience, and our focus was on teaching them how to tell a story. And you'd be surprised how many of these guys had worked, or use the word work, but I'll say how many of these guys had wrestled for 5 years or 6 years or such, and yet didn't really know how to tell a story. And part of that was I had a friend of mine put together a disc for me, and on that disc is Rogers O'Connor 61, Comiskey Park in Chicago, Benoit Regal from Pillman 2000, Dickie Steinborn and Tommy Sigler from Atlanta in 73, Brad Armstrong and Ric Flair from 89. Anyway, And we use this to, watch this. These people are telling a story. There's a beginning and a middle and an end.
Yeah.
And that's now, mostly now it's just trading spots.
Yes.
You do a spot,
exactly.
I do a spot. And honestly, and I've said this to some of these kids too, why it's public masturbation. They're just
It really is, and it drives Nikki.
They're
and I crazy
entertaining
when we come on the
themselves.
show and we talk about this. It makes
they're
us
entertaining
nuts.
themselves. I tell these, you know what you like personally absolutely doesn't matter. It's the idea is for you to entertain the people that bought tickets.
Yes.
So what do they like? And that's the other thing. When I had my school in Cincinnati, or if I work with anybody long enough now, but everybody that came out of my place could call a match on the fly. That was a must. And here I tell these kids even today, okay, let's say Vince is paying you $1 million to lay it out step by step, fine. But human beings make mistakes. And if you're got a elaborate finish worked out and say pop a hamstring 5 minutes into this 20-minute match and can't make that climb to the top, you've got to change that finish. And you can't ask for a timeout. We're going back to the back and sit down and talk another half hour.
No, there's no
about this.
redos. No do-overs.
And because so many of these guys do it paint by numbers and lay it out in the back, they don't understand the nuances like facial expressions because they're busy remembering spot 14 that comes after 13. And they can't concentrate on how should I sell this punch? Is this the first one? Are we 10 minutes in? Are we 2 minutes in? Is this the second punch? And when I talk to my trainees like that, I say, and it takes me longer to say it to you now than you have to think about it because you have to react.
Exactly.
I'll tell you another thing, Les. Now, see, I do both worlds. I've been in the world of acting as well. And what you're describing, I can sit there and watch somebody and doing a scene, and it's like, this person doesn't know their lines and they're struggling. They're not acting. They're reciting. They're trying to remember what words are coming up next. What Angelo's saying, then I got to respond to it. Same thing with the matches. These kids come out. They don't use the crowd. They don't play to the crowd. It's like they're in a box, and the crowd is looking into the box and watching and I like what you said. Public masturbation is the greatest description of what they're doing. Hey, everybody, look at me. This is what I'm doing. But they're also killing themselves because I said something to somebody. It was at Cauliflower Alley, and I'm like, you're not going to last long. I'm watching what you're doing in there. My back hurts. This is crazy. You're not.
Yeah, Nikki, you and I have had that conversation. These guys are taking lives off of their light years off of their career. They're taking their life and just disseminating it, year by year with every stupid, ridiculous move they do. They're just, do they realize, how
what they don't realize is that the art form is dying. And the reason it is because we have this catch-all phrase, which is everybody's smart, but everybody isn't smart.
No.
I mean, they understand that because it's been told, the business is predetermined. The end. Okay. So the other thing I try to teach is if this is the case, then the strongest weapon you have is the element of surprise. So you don't telegraph your finish 10 minutes before you're ready to do it. Exactly. You don't telegraph anything. You work, which again comes back to timing, and that's, and the other thing is they don't understand how to cover up the other guy screwing up. How many times do you see a guy standing, bent at the waist, peeking out of the corner of his eye, waiting for that guy to finally come off that top rope, and it's like, Jesus, man. I mean, you got to cover the other guys. The art form is dying in that respect.
It's
crazy. You know what? The better coaches teach guys how to call it. Pritchard does. I do. Rip Rogers does. Rudy Gonzalez does.
Rip's a trip, please. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Rip is a hell of a train.
Oh my God, yeah, he is. You know,
Rip is Mr. Politically Correct.
I love
Oh
that
yeah.
guy.
Oh yeah.
Oh please. You know, you said something important. In fact, something that Nikki and I discussed on one of my last shows. The element of surprise and and calling things on the fly. And Nikki brought up a really, really interesting point. You're talking about being smart. Nick, remember we had that conversation with Scott Teal about, being smartened up and, and I asked, when was the first time you were smartened up?
You didn't smarten Scott up now, did you?
Yeah.
I'm teasing. I love Scotty.
No,
he's good people. Anyway, go ahead.
But here's the thing, though. Talking about Nikki, you brought up the interesting point of Hulk Hogan. Nobody saw it coming when Hogan won the title.
Right.
Right. Nobody saw,
everybody, right. Everybody that was talking and telling things that were going on the inside, nobody saw that one coming.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now with Sheik, beating Backlund. Okay, they didn't even see that coming. Let's start right there. Because you're right, Angela. We'll go back there a month before. And when it was told, Iron Sheik beat Backlund last, but he's like, what? What the hell are you talking about? But then the art of misdirection is basically part of being a worker. It always has been. I know. I always felt that Leo Garibaldi became a very, very good friend, but also was one of the greatest bookers I ever had the pleasure to work for. And Leo always said, you always give the people what they want, just never when they expect it. Very good.
So, and that basically tells the story too, And the other, the other problem today is with, they use the same finishes over so often, and sometimes the same finish twice in the same show.
Wait a minute, I'll go you one better. Stop right there. I got the classic for you. And it happened last week. I got the classic for you. And if you don't believe me, go back and watch the show and you'll see it. In one show, in one 2-hour show, the same finish was done 5 times. Not even BSing you. Wow. 5 times in a 2-hour match, they did the same finish.
You mean a 2-hour show?
How they got around it. Here's how they got around it. You're going to love it. Talk about misdirection. They had the referee in a different spot every time to make it look like a different finish. It's the same fucking finish. Pardon my French, but I speak fluent French.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's just that they don't, again, they pay no attention to details because they assume everybody's smart. So that means there are no limits, right? We can be as goofy as we want to be. I'll tell you this. I had this conversation, and I won't throw this guy under the bus. He's a sweetheart of a guy, hell of a trainer, and a dear friend. But anyway, he's quite a bit younger than I am. But we had this conversation a few years ago, and he said to me, if you were a young boy today and were just starting to watch wrestling, would it make you want to be a wrestler? And I didn't have to wait to answer. I said no. And he said, me either. So
what does that tell you?
Understood.
I mean, think about that, Nicky. What does that tell you? Where guys today are like wouldn't even acknowledge the business now.
No, because
I'm a smart ass. When I say that to people, when this comes up in a conversation, I'll say, and the reason is I always enjoyed watching the Three Stooges. I just never wanted to be one of them.
Exactly. I love it. But and part of the problem though, too, Les, and I think Nicky, you'll understand this too, especially now. You've got corporate wrestling. There are no territories. There are no more. To me, the nuts and bolts of a wrestling promotion And Nikki, you and I have talked about it with Davey O'Hannon and
Yes.
Scott Casey.
Yes.
There are no more promoters. There are no more bookers. There are no more the nuts and bolts of a wrestling company are your booker, your promoter, your announcer.
See, they don't have bookers. They have WWE's got as many as 40 writers for the whole setup. But how many of those writers? The point is, none of those writers have ever been in a ring.
That's exactly the point. And the other point is, to my point, you never had writers. You never needed a writer. Your booker was your writer.
Well, of course, but he was also usually an ex-wrestler as well,
exactly.
or a current wrestler for that matter. But I mean, I've always said. If you brought Ernest Hemingway back from the grave to be a writer for me, I said I would use him because he obviously is a creative genius, but I would have a wrestler sit down next to him with a red pencil to keep him in bounds.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't understand the business.
Exactly. Exactly. To that point, I had a writer on the show recently. A gentleman named Vince Russo, who was the head writer for World Wrestling Entertainment back in the 90s, the guy who created the Attitude Era. This guy got lucky, and he knows he got lucky. A guy that's never been in the wrestling business, but he knew how to write, and he got lucky at a time when wrestling needed something. Wrestling needs a shot in the ass now.
He proved another point too. They'd always told me all the years I worked that you couldn't kill the business, and he proved that you couldn't. He tried.
Exactly. Nikki, pick up on that.
Well, I want to take it a different direction. What you were saying, it needs an enema, is what it really needs. Not a shot in the arm. It needs an enema because.
Well, you know what? In general, stop and think. Everything's been done to death.
Yes.
Every spot has been done 6,000. Well, it's like, is the dive special anymore? You see it in every match.
No.
Multiple times in some, right? It's, example, I tell young guys, I say, you remember the first time you saw your girlfriend naked? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I said, you remember the 300th time? Don't even bother to answer. I know the answer. Yeah. No, you don't, because it becomes commonplace. And if I see all this same stuff over and over and over again, it's of no value. It's knowing when to use it and when not to is part of understanding and the art of the business.
Les, one of the things that Nikita and I talked about on the last show, and we had our friend Davey O'Hannon was joining us for that show, and Cowboy Scott Casey was on the show with us as well. We talked exactly about what you're talking about. When you have a match where the opening spot is a quadruple flip off the top rope with a half gainer and a spike into the guy. I mean, and that's your opening move. Where do you go from there? Do you set yourself on fire? Which, by the way, one guy actually did, stupid bastard, but he did. He actually set himself on fire to get heat.
Well, see, no they're trying to.
I'm not shitting.
They're trying to top them. Sure, but they're trying to top themselves, and at some point you can't. That's also why bookers didn't have lifelong jobs, right? Because a booker, at some point, part of his job is continue to top himself if he's doing well, and at some point he can't. He has his ceiling, his limitations, just like everybody else. And so now you're seeing the same over, even more so, right? I mean, we're all limited in terms of physically how much we can do, but it's just a matter of when. I tell kids today, one of the best workers of modern times is Mark Callis, the Undertaker, because he understands timing and psychology. He hides his weak points and plays to his strengths, and he's protected his character.
Yeah.
So yeah,
One
and
of
it's
the
paid
one
off,
of the
hasn't
things
it?
that
Yes, yes, it has.
no, I was just going to say one of the things that I'm really curious about is you're talking about bookers. We have Karen McDaniel on the show recently, and in his career, Wahoo was one hell of a booker. He comes from one school of booking, and then you've got the other school of booking, which is the Dusty Rhodes school of booking. Both guys were wrestlers. Both guys were bookers. In Dusty's case, we know that he booked himself a lot and booked himself over a lot, which made enemies of some of the guys in the locker room. Wahoo, on the other hand, never booked himself in a match while he was booker. That's a fact. And you can check it out. That's factual. Here's my question.
I've worked with Eddie in a lot of territories. I never worked around him when he was booking, so I couldn't say one way or the other. But,
yeah. So, but here's the question I have for you. Maybe Les, you and Nikita can share your experience on it. Booking, a wrestler / booker. Good idea? Not a good idea? Benefits and drawbacks.
Well, when I broke into business, virtually every booker was a wrestler, and for the most part, probably still active at the time. Let me just Leo was a referee. I mentioned Garibaldi; he was a referee. Louis Tillett wrestled.
Oh my God! Yeah, sure.
Lester Welch wrestled. Eddie Graham wrestled. Of course, when we had this when Ron had the territory here. All the bookers wrestled. I mean, every booker that was a booker. I won't run down the whole list, but for the most part, your bookers wrestled, or had been wrestlers. So to me, sometimes they overused themselves. In many cases, that was not uncommon. But overall, what made them good bookers was the fact that they had been, smart workers, and understood it from that angle.
Les, what about the criticism levied toward the late Dusty Rhodes about him being, for lack of a better word, and forgive me for being selfish? I'll use that word.
Well, again, I never worked for Dusty as a booker, when he was a booker. But that wasn't uncommon either. I mean, when I say it, listen, I'm not condoning it or in Dusty's case, you mean, did he probably push himself to the point where it wasn't good for business? Well, he probably did. And then again, I'm not right off the top of my head, but I can probably name you 5 other bookers that did the same thing. So Dusty stood out because at that time, there was the big deal with Vince wanting to take over the country and Jimmy spreading his wings to do the same, or at least to expand and get bigger. Yeah. So it stood out more. But and again, I'm not sticking up for Virgil either. I mean, I'm just saying, a lot of that in the 60s and 70s was just common to begin with. Again,
is the time frame that we're talking about relevant to this, or is it something that you've seen that was ever problematic while you worked the territories? Now, granted, when you worked, the territories were kind of on their way out, but you were in in quite a bit of the fray, where you've seen people that were wrestlers / bookers, for whatever, putting themselves. Let me ask you, Nikki.
Yes.
I'll give you the Dusty Rhodes thing. Your thoughts on that? I mean, good idea. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what. I compare it to that's the bad. The good would be Gorilla Monsoon. Okay. Very familiar. Now, you are very familiar with Monsoon. He
sure.
carried everything, of course, and it was like He didn't put himself over. He did not book himself in many matches. And if he was in it, Monsoon's match would be 1 minute. This is the 70s, up until 83, when Vince decided, okay, I'm going to call it. And just like Les referred to earlier, okay, maybe you shot all of your bullets. So Vince was like, now I'm going in a different direction. Step aside. We're going to do entertainment. You're a great wrestler, Monsoon. You did a great job booking. Now I'm going to show you how to do entertainment booking. So
interesting.
Yes.
I'm glad you said that, Nikki. Expand on that for me. The difference between, well, let me ask you a hot button question first, and then I'll have you expand on it. Entertainment, good or bad in wrestling?
Bad.
As a word, entertainment, good idea, bad idea, to use that word associated with pro wrestling.
Bad.
It used to. You and I grew up, Nikki, in a time, and even less, grew up in a time when it was called, even if it was never entertainment, but they called it an exhibition.
Yes.
They used to use that word. Now, they've pulled the veil so far back, and not only can you see the guys in the back, you can see the janitor, you can see the electrician. You know, I'm parenthetically, but
okay.
you know, it's so exposed.
For Les, what you don't maybe know, I wrote a book called When It Was Real about the 70s being a fan and what it meant to us. And that's why, and that's how I'm going to answer Angela's question, when it was real, because we looked at it. And now everybody from day friggin' one was in your ear. It's this, it's that. It's like, I don't give a shit. I'm watching this magnificent, these superheroes coming to life. And
well,
they
sure.
cultivated us.
Well, that's the same way. Yes, I was hooked on the business in front of a black and white 10-inch screen in a neighbor's house, and it wasn't even my television. But yes, you're right. When when I tell kids this today, they look at me like I'm nuts. But I said, I started training for my career in Boston in February of 1960. And I said I had my first match July the 4th, 1960. I said, when they smartened me up? July the 4th, 1960. When I got on the Greyhound bus in Cincinnati to go to Boston, I knew there was showmanship, and I knew I'd heard of people say, I believed. And nobody, as I was around, because I helped set up rings and this and that, but nobody talked in front of me really. But you know what? As I figured out a little bit, or I thought I did, I wasn't about to say anything because I knew somebody kicked my ass if I did and show me I was wrong. So I just kept my mouth shut. But yeah, the day of my first match is when I got smartened up.
Now, Les, you work for Santos, right?
Yeah.
Now, see, I seen a lot of advertisements, and it would just be Santos. That was Santos Presents Professional TV Wrestling. And they always made sure it was TV wrestling because that's... But
he never had television, as far as I know.
No, he
really
did, but, WWF star. So it was like, yeah, that's who we're going to come to see. We're not going to just see, like, some nobody. It's like, we're going to see the guys on television that we watch every Saturday.
Exactly.
That was great. That is, to me, I really take my hat off to you. That's wonderful to work for a guy like that, Santos.
Well, Rufus R. Jones broke in there. The original Beautiful Bob Harmon, who's also a Cincinnati boy, broke in there. Dusty broke in there 9 years after I did, but he broke in there too.
Wow.
Pat. Well, I'll tell you what. Pat Patterson and I worked together there in 1961. Pat was just, he was. Just had a couple years under his belt from, Canada. I worked with Terry Garvin there. There were a lot. But, that's the other thing, too. We had, as a green kid, 19-year-old kid, I had all these great veterans to work with. Yes. These kids today don't have that. It's the blind leading the blind.
Right.
Let's talk about that for a little bit. I'm just back. I want to back up for a half a step, and then I want to talk about the training aspect. When Nikita Brezhnikov does a movie as an actor, he plays a part. He gets shot in the movie. He's not really getting shot. He's playing a character, and he's expected to play a character because he's an actor. But when a wrestler, here we go, the difference between a worker and a wrestler. But when a wrestler plays a character, and now he's trying to act like a wrestler instead of be a wrestler, you end up with stupid segments where a guy, and Nikki, we talked about this before, in fact, on the last show, where a guy has his eyeball fall out. Mm-hmm. And he catches his eye, and now it's a fish bobber. Mm-hmm. It's a painted fish bobber, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's not wrestling, brother. They know that's not pro wrestling.
Well, the Fiend that they do in WWE is, he materializes from the swamps and crap.
Oh,
that's no, no, it's not. And the point is, it's not really good theater either. That's the problem.
That's exactly.
Most of the comedy is not funny. It's sophomoric and stupid. And you can't. But the whole idea is the business is now is corporations that own it, right?
And then that
Sinclair, WWE, huh?
That ties also in to what we're talking about training and who's teaching them. Where are they getting? Who's teaching them this stuff?
Well, you see, here's the thing. This is America, where we all want a deal. So you want to get the cheapest deal you can get. Yet we all know you can't buy a Cadillac for the price of Chevrolet. But these kids will. Hey, that guy will train you for $5 a lesson. Whoa, that's where I'm going. And see, and that's the difference. Now, when I sold my company in 2002, at that point, you could come train with me for 6 months for $4,000, and that was 4 times a week, 3-hour sessions, and kids, and I mean, we did business, but anymore, there's. Well, here's the problem. It's like watering down the alcohol, the booze in your bar. This guy comes to. I've got 60 years in the business, so this guy comes to me, and after a few weeks, or say a month, or whatever, 6 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever, I've yelled at him once too often. So screw that. I'm out of here. But I can rent that warehouse over there, and I'll buy a ring. By God. I'll set up my own school. So now he can teach 2 months worth. And some kid gets mad at him and leaves, and you see what I'm saying? And they all say, I'm a trainer. I'm a wrestler. I'm a trainer.
And the other
oh boy.
Well, I make a joke out of it, Rudy Gonzalez, but I always say, Rudy, there's more of them than there are of us, and their numbers are growing all the time. And it is true. Yeah. There's no guidelines. And again,
here's the thing though. What's frightening to think about? What's really frightening to think about is that they have a training center in Florida. WWE has this multi-million-dollar. I mean, it's high tech.
I've worked there. Yes, I've been there as a guest coach. So yes, I know exactly what it is.
State of the art shit. But what's coming out of there is far less than state of the art. When you got a guy, like
let me cut you off right there, because
sure.
I've worked for the corporation as a trainer when I had HWA in Cincinnati. I'd worked with Vince and doing magazines for WWF back in the late the late 70s. But anyway,
and I know you worked with my uncle.
Who was who?
I know you worked with my uncle.
Which uncle?
Phil Zacco.
What? Oh, no, I never met him. Nope.
Really?
No, never did. But anyway, what I was going to say.
Never met him.
Yeah, no. But now I've lost where I forget where I was going. See, but I can say I'm old. I can get away with that, right?
There you go.
What was I talking about before I was so rudely interrupted? Damn it.
I'm so sorry. WWF.
Yeah, but I've worked with Vince for numerous times over the years. But here's the thing. I know it's a corporation and they have rules. So I didn't know what to expect. When I ran my school, I ran it my way, right? I mean, obviously had guidelines. They paid me, but nobody came and told me you got to do it this way or that way. So when I got down there to do my week, I said, is there anything specifically you want me to do or anything you want me to steer away from or shy away from? No, right. Do what you do, impart knowledge. And I was left, and working with the other coaches. I met all the coaches, but I worked more with Carino and Terry Taylor. In fact, I helped Terry get his feet wet here in Knoxville years ago. But anyway, the coaches teach the right way. I'm not sure. The problem, I think, sometimes is the guys, they need to get out of there and work with people outside the system. That was the other thing, too. See, I broke in Boston, but then when I went to Indianapolis, and from there I went to Calgary, and from Calgary back to Indianapolis, and then to Kansas, and on, it was like going to a different school every time because I had all these veterans in those places to work with. And these kids today don't have that, and they can all learn. Well, everybody that went to my school learned my system, but it's not. They're spread all over the place, opposed to all being in one place, like you are if you come out of the PC, if you come out of the Performance Center.
Sure.
Am I making sense? I hope. I don't know
absolutely. But I tell you what, there's no substitute for good old-fashioned practical experience. And my friend Nikki Brezhnikov you never went formally trained to a wrestling school, but you, Nikki, learned the old-fashioned way, on-the-job training from one of the best.
With Nikolai Volkov, yes, and then most of the times managing Nikolai, then he would be in the main event. So we're working with Snuka, we're working with Bundy, we're working with Neidhart, all of these people. So it's like, man, this is great. And like I told you before, I walked in saying, "Oh, Nikolai, I've been watching this shit for 20 years. I know what I'm doing." He's like, "You don't know what the hell, you know where the door is, the shit house yet." I said, "Okay, let's see." And he was right. And it was like, wow. I learned quick, shut the mouth and open the ears, and everything worked beautiful. But, I'm going to give you a good example. Jim Cornette, he said it best not too long ago about comparing different styles today, yesterday. And he brought up my idol, Chief Jay Strongbow. He said, and he didn't say it disrespectfully. He says, I don't get it. He said, Strongbow, he go out there, and all he'll do is throw out his chest and make a look and dance around the ring, and the place is popping. These guys are going out here busting their backs, busting their asses. They can't get people to stop yawning. He's like, but he got over. That's a master craftsman. That's somebody that can work. That's what we need, work.
Nikki, it's called charisma, something that doesn't exist anymore. The Chief could do that. He could look at you a certain way.
With what you're seeing with these kids, though, is there's just so many cool hand signals, and the rest of them looks ridiculous. Or that everybody has to have a particular way to walk or shake their ass or climb the ropes in a different way, or and the point is all that's cool, but if when the bell rings you can't work, it don't matter. I mean,
Les, let me ask you a question along that line, because you just led me into a perfect question. When you trained guys, were you a big fan of the leg slap?
No, I never taught. I don't teach leg slaps. No.
Okay.
And I've told guys. Well, Bobby Eaton used to. Bobby Eaton used to slap his shoulder. Right? As he's throwing that right-handed punch, he'd slap his right shoulder with his left hand or something like that. But anyway, no, I doing it over and over again, I can now. I can get you in a side headlock and set you up in a certain way, and I can throw an uppercut up under your chin, and I can pop the inside of my forearm off my sweaty side and make it sound like a rifle shot.
Yeah.
But I only do that once or twice in a match, so I don't stand there and do it repeatedly, so you might figure it out. And that's the other thing that goes on now, too. They were talking about doing somebody brought up Wrestling 2's Big Knee, and they said, well, he used to slap down across the guy's back. And I said, yes, but here's a couple of things you don't realize when you say that. First of all, by slapping down on the guy's back is like he's driving the guy into the knee. So that made sense if you break it down.
Yeah.
I said, but the other thing is he only threw one knee in a match.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they were slow, you weren't going to figure it out because he didn't do it 15 times. And that's the other thing. These kids do the same stuff over and over. They throw They throw so many punches sometimes that half the punches don't hit. Don't touch anything.
That's not selling it, and then it looks even stupider.
Exactly, Nicky. Exactly.
Because I tell you, Stan the Man Stasiak was the best that I ever seen at throwing that punch and that sound effect. It sounded like he cracked the guy's skull. And sell it, Chief would sell it. And it was like, wow. But Les
he'd make it sound like a rifle shot, Nicky.
Yes, and Les is right. He didn't do it the whole night. He gave me one time, boom, and that was it. And then we're moving on.
Yeah, when I mentioned me popping my inside of my forearm off my side, throwing that uppercut, first time I saw that was Pat O'Connor and doing it to somebody else, and this was like my first maybe less than a year in the business. And I thought, oh, my God, he's potatoed the hell out of me. But he hadn't hit him at all, as a matter of fact. Hadn't touched him. And that's the other thing. When I lock up with some of these kids they train with, and I'll say, Jesus, are you mad at me? No, sir. What? I said, loosen up. My God, this is a work.
Everybody works so tight. Les, we're in a strange kind of juxtaposition right now with this crazy corona thing going on and wrestling not being able to have like live crowds and and I have this theory and I want you and Nicky to chime in on it. I'm really curious to see what your thoughts are. I have this theory that you could get away with no audience in just about any other legit sport but wrestling. In my opinion, if you don't have a crowd in wrestling, you don't have wrestling. You could get away with it in MMA, baseball. You don't need a crowd to watch a baseball game because they're going to play anyway. Or football, basketball. Wrestling is completely and utterly fan-driven. It's fan interactive. They're a part of your show. When you see a guy standing on the ropes and he's raising his hands and there's nobody in that arena, that's stupid. To Nicky's point, it looks stupid.
Yes, it does. And having the paid employees cheering is kind of goofy too. Now this Thunderdome thing, because that's what America's Got Talent is doing, is better, except it's a wall of sound. No, what I was going to say is, and here's I'll give you my reasoning. Our generation, my generation, could work better with no people than the current generation, because here's the reason. The current generation works for the pop. And you can see those guys at first, when they first started working with the empty buildings, is they'd stop and get that, because they're waiting for that pop and it's not there. But with our with the guys in the 60s and 70s, the pop or the crowd reaction was actually secondary to telling the story. It came because we told the story. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely.
It came, the response from the audience came because we told the story. And these guys are just, well, I just did this cool spot. This is where you cheer, or this is where you do this or that, right? And it's not happening. So they're not equipped to work in that environment. Not that we wanted to work in that environment, but I've never worked to a complete empty house. I worked to a few I thought were, but no. But I think our generation would have come out. And again, this is not about, back in my day thing. It's just a difference in the psychology and the way the matches are laid out.
Les, I got a question for you and Nikki. What can we learn from studio wrestling back in the 50s and 60s?
God, I don't know. I don't know what.
Think about something. Back in the day, and Nikita, you'll really appreciate this, being a kid of the Northeast. We had a wrestling show on from Pittsburgh Studio Wrestling,
right?
And it was seen in this area. They had maybe 8 to 10 people around the ring, but the back wall. This was the catch-all. The back wall was painted with an audience. There was an audience painted on the back wall.
Wow!
Like our studio here in Knoxville, back when Fuller had Southeastern, we had that too. We had
exactly. Yep. Ron talked about it when he was here. He sure did, Les. Ron talked about it when he was here. Yeah.
I remember
Southeastern did it, and Pittsburgh Studio Wrestling did it.
Well, I wrestled in at Pittsburgh Studio. I'm trying to think what year that would have been. Probably, 63 maybe? 62,
probably
63.
63,
somewhere
64. Nikki, when did Bruno win the title off of Buddy?
62. Now, May 17th. Now, in Baltimore, they had Channel 11, WBAL, 50 people. They were all people in the studio. It was a local 1-hour show. And it was like, okay, so we definitely, we got the, not ambiance, but the, let's say it was a close-knit, you got the fan reaction, you got your TV matches, but still they loved to see that talent. That Haystacks Calhoun coming in, Bruno, people like Blassie when they bring him in, it was like, that was well done because you got the reactions. It was that small, quaint group. They're right there. And the camera was able, those days we don't have the high-tech shit like they have now. It was just one friggin' camera. But still you were able to pan the crowd, pick out like Mrs. Krieger. She would go to Philadelphia, the Garden, in Baltimore, where she lived, Baltimore. And there you go. She was not paid. That was legitimate emotion coming from that lady. And
well, I've heard all this story about paid fans, and I don't know of any in the 20 years that I've worked.
Promoters, Les, there ain't
the noise you got out of the fans back then is a different type of noise. Now these people are just they've been educated by sports entertainment to be a part of the show. So,
yes,
I've said if I were booking in this day and age, you can't really tell in that environment whether somebody is actually over or not. I mean, because, let's face it, if you're sitting home watching, let's say Raw, for example, every Monday, and you got tickets, they're coming to your town in 3 months. By the time you get in that arena, you know that when so-and-so comes down the ramp, you chant this. Or when the so-and-so does this, you do such and such.
Yeah.
And so it's being part of the show. So does that mean that person's over? No, not really.
No.
So it's really tough to figure that out, I would think, if you were trying to actually, determine this guy is over more than so-and-so.
The fans are programmed almost like a radio station program.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. They're responding to music and they're responding to what everybody else is going with. So you got it.
Exactly. Les, I got a
Pavlov's
question
dog.
for you. Here's a curveball for you, brother. Here's a curveball for you. Why was George Goulas not a bigger star?
Because he couldn't work would
Thank
probably
you.
be the biggest reason.
I told Scott Teal that. And Scott said, well, he was a decent athlete. No, he couldn't work for shit. Are you kidding me? And his father was the promoter. And that's why he got over it. Because his father was
Yes. Well, one of my dearest friends and one of the wrestling cousins, when he and Kirby and I did that gimmick, Dennis Hall, was George's partner for quite a while. And having shared apartments with Dennis and traveled and worked as his partner, I know that when somebody screw up in the ring, Dennis would get quite aggravated. And so I used to tease him when after he'd spent so much time with George, I said, just how much Valium do you take before you go to the ring each night with? What do you mean? I said, well, it's the only possible way you could survive the way he works, Dennis, for Christ's sake.
Arguably the worst professional wrestler ever to step in the ring. Oh, my God.
Possibly. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, he's up there, Les, for sure.
No, I'm not trying to take the trophy away from him. I'm just saying. I can think of a few I can think of a couple in the last 20, 25 years that could fit into that category.
I'm telling you what. Well, let me ask you, brother. Will we ever see a return? They say that things come in cycles. They say everything old is new again. History repeats itself. Things along those lines, right? Will we?
Go ahead.
To arena wrestling, to house shows, to big crowds of 15 or 20,000 thunderous people cheering on a super villain or a hero. Are those days gone? I
think so. Well, and the reason I can sit here and watch more wrestling than I'll ever need for $10 a month on the WWE network, right? So why would I pay $15 to park, $100 for a ticket, $8 for a beer, when I can sit here and for what, watch WrestleMania for $10 and be not stand in line for anything? So that's part of it.
What?
Plus when they give you so much on television. See, we used TV to draw people to the house shows.
There you go.
And they don't use TV to draw people anywhere. Well, hell, Vince is making more money on television. You realize this pandemic, they're still going to have the biggest year they've ever had because of the Fox. Because of the Fox contract and stuff like that. So, I mean, they're, in that respect, they're not going to hurt at all. But the business is going to hurt because if and when you say sports, it's all sports. Anybody that's got a TV show on a national network is sports entertainment. I don't care what they say. But I'd love to see wrestling come back. It would be clever, I think, if somebody actually had an alternative to all this other stuff. But anyway, no, I think that if the numbers keep falling, and I mean, even the new companies, I mean, AEW is doing okay, but like anything that's new, it'll subside at a certain degree because people will take offense to something there or whatever. But yeah, it's all sports entertainment. It's AEW is just a different comedy show than WWE, and WWE is a different comedy show than Ring of Honor.
That's a good way to put it. Comedy. But here's what saddens me. Wrestling will survive in some fashion or form. Here's what hurts me though. The fans are going to die. The fans are dying from starvation. They're starving for their wrestling. You're talking about, we're spoiled,
Well, see, but you're talking about grown-ups, but the demographic, like AEW is getting the big demographic for the 18 to whatever was it, 18 to 29 or 18 to 39 or whatever the hell it is, the people that spend the money, and that's what the TV stations are concerned with.
Yeah,
right?
But they're also people that are still living in their mother's basement.
Well, here's the funny thing: the WWE's getting the older generation. They're getting the demographic of the people 50 and over.
That's a scary fucking thought, brother. I got news for you.
Well, it's true. Thought. It's true. That's the numbers. I don't live and breathe by those things, but the networks obviously do. But yeah, they're getting more of old. But I don't know why, except that some of the stuff AEW does is goofier than what Vince does. So
Nicky,
who knows?
Take us home, brother.
I believe they're hoping the older generation, like we are, that is going to go back to what we used to believe in. But there's nothing to believe in. Not just believe what we're seeing, but like believe in a character. We believed in Bruno. We believed in Chief. We hated Lou Albano and the Valiants. Today, nobody cares. They just say, okay, it's done, change the channel.
Yeah, it's even booking. That's the problem. I mean, they're not pushed, you beat me, I'll beat you. You beat me, I'll beat you. It's...
That's
and here's the other thing, that being a champion doesn't matter because they swap belts like some people change clothes.
Exactly.
Well, that's another thing. The belts now are a marketing gimmick. That's all they are. They're tools to sell to kids at $500 a pop. They're not cheap. Those things are not cheap. I got news for you.
And
I know they're not.
It meant something.
And they're making a fortune.
A tag team championship change was a big deal. It was like, wow, and you didn't want to dare miss a show because you thought a tag team belt might change, or even the heavyweight belt. That's why when they did it in Baltimore, if you remember, Ange, back in the 77 with Bruno, it was like,
oh my God, and Superstar, sure.
You know why? Because Maryland State Athletic Commission had a rule that once a decision's made, it can't be changed. So Bruno got screwed. And that was it. Live with it. Superstar's your champion. We hated it as fans, but it worked. It was beautifully done. It was like...
it was genius, brother. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
People thought, well, not just Madison Square Garden has heavyweight title changes. It could happen anywhere now. So it gave you hope as a fan.
You guys still there?
We're here, Les.
Yeah, still here. Yep.
Okay.
I can hear every word you're saying. Go ahead.
All right, no, I was, you said take us home, and I thought maybe you'd already gone home.
No, not yet. But I will take you home here. Les, it was an honor to talk with you. A lot of good insight, and I'll tell you what, stay healthy and keep on doing it, man. You're not done.
Well, you guys stay healthy, too, and I've enjoyed the conversation.
Les Thatcher. You are an icon, a legend. You're a welcome guest here anytime. We only have an hour tonight, but I'd love to bring you back for one of our famous roundtable episodes. Nicky's an expert at our roundtables.
All right, cool. Yeah, we'll do that at some point. That'd be great. That'd be great.
I'd love to have you. Les, thank you so much. I'll touch base with you in a day or so. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Thank you. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Nicky.
You got it.
All right, Nicky, take care, my friend. Enjoy your dinner.
Okay.
Take it easy, and I'll see you on the flip side. Happy wrestling, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.